man about to die asks for a single olive. Another requests dirt from the ground. One leaves dessert uneaten, saying he'll finish it later, but there is no later. These aren't just meals. They're the final psychological fingerprints of the condemned, and what they reveal will disturb you. Death row inmates get one last choice before the state ends their life. Most ask for comfort food, childhood favorites, something to remind them they were once human. But some requests cross into territory that's hard to explain. Tonight, we're examining 10 of the most unsettling last meals ever recorded, and the dark psychology behind them. Fair warning, these aren't just strange food orders. They're windows into minds facing oblivion, and what you're about to hear will stay with you long after this video ends. August 15, 1963. Victor Feger sits in his cell at the Iowa State Penitentiary. In a few hours, he'll become the last person Iowa ever executes. Guards ask what he wants for his final meal. His answer? A single olive, with the pit still in it. No steak, no cake, no last taste of freedom in food form. Just one olive. When pressed, Feger explains his reasoning. He hopes an olive tree will sprout from his grave, growing as a symbol of peace. It's a beautiful image, almost poetic. But here's what makes it disturbing. This is the same man who lured a doctor to his death by faking a medical emergency, then shot him in the head and dumped his body across state lines. Was this genuine remorse? A final grasp at redemption? Or was Victor Feger performing for history, crafting one last manipulation before the rope tightened around his neck? The guards gave him his olive. He ate it, pit and all. Hours later he was dead, and no tree ever grew from his grave. Texas, 1990. James Edward Smith makes a request that stops prison officials cold. He wants dirt, a lump of earth from the ground. Smith claims it's for a voodoo ritual, something tied to beliefs he won't fully explain. The prison denies it immediately. Instead, they hand him a cup of yogurt and call it settled. But here's what haunts this story. What was he planning to do with that dirt? What ritual requires soil in your final moments? And more disturbingly, did James Edward Smith go to his execution believing his spiritual protection had been stolen, leaving him vulnerable to whatever he thought waited on the other side? We'll never know. The dirt stayed in the ground. Smith ate his yogurt in silence. Then they led him to the chamber. May 10, 1994. Illinois prepares to execute one of America's most notorious serial killers. John Wayne Gacy, the man who murdered at least 33 young men and boys, burying most of them in the crawl space beneath his house. For years, Gacy had entertained children at parties dressed as Pogo the Clown. Now, facing lethal injection, he orders his final meal. A bucket of KFC original recipe chicken, 12 fried shrimp, French fries, and strawberries. Sounds normal enough. Until you learn this detail. Gacy had managed 3 KFC restaurants in the 1960s. This wasn't just comfort food. This was him recreating a time before the murders, before the bodies, before he became the monster in the crawl space. He ate every bite. Guards said he showed no emotion, no remorse. Just a man eating chicken like it was any other Tuesday. Hours later, his last words were, "Kiss my ass." Even in death, Gacy was performing. And his final meal was part of the show. This one breaks your heart before it disturbs you. January 24, 1992. Arkansas executes Ricky Ray Rector for the murder of a police officer. His last meal, steak, fried chicken, cherry Kool-Aid, and pecan pie. He eats everything except the pie. When guards come to take him, Rector points to the dessert and says, "I'll eat it later." There is no later. In 2 hours, he'll be dead. Here's what makes this unbearable. Rector had shot himself in the head during his arrest, destroying a significant portion of his brain. He was mentally impaired to the point where he couldn't understand his own execution. When they came for him that night, he helped the guards find a vein for the lethal injection. He thought he was going to the hospital. That pecan pie sat on the table, waiting for a man who would never return. His case became a rallying point in debates about executing the mentally disabled. But the damage was done. Rector died not fully understanding why. September 21, 2011. Lawrence Brewer makes Texas prison history, though not in the way he intended. His last meal request reads like a restaurant's entire menu: 2 chicken fried steaks smothered in gravy, a triple meat bacon cheeseburger, a cheese omelet, a bowl of fried okra, 1 pound of barbecue, half a loaf of white bread, 3 fajitas, a meat lover's pizza, a pint of ice cream, and a slab of peanut butter fudge. The prison prepares everything. The cost is astronomical. The tray arrives stacked with enough food to feed 5 people. Brewer looks at it, then refuses to eat a single bite. The disrespect is calculated. Brewer, a white supremacist convicted of a brutal hate crime murder, uses his final act to waste resources and mock the system. His message is clear: you can kill my body, but I controlled this moment. Texas responds by abolishing last meal requests entirely. From that day forward, death row inmates in Texas eat whatever the prison is serving. No special orders. No final choices. Brewer didn't just reject his meal. He took the tradition away from every condemned person who came after him. Dusseldorf, Germany, 1931. Peter Curtin, known as the Vampire of Dusseldorf, sits down to his last meal: Wiener Schnitzel, fried potatoes, and a bottle of white wine. He eats with enthusiasm, then asks for seconds. The guards allow it. He's hours from the guillotine after all. Curtin finishes his second helping, dabs his mouth with a napkin, and asks the prison psychiatrist a question that still echoes through criminal psychology. After my head has been chopped off, will I still be able to hear, at least for a moment, the sound of my own blood gushing from the stump of my neck? That would be the pleasure to end all pleasures. Even facing death, Curtin fantasizes about blood. His crimes involve drinking victims' blood and achieving sexual gratification from their suffering. The psychiatrist doesn't answer. What could you possibly say? Hours later, the blade falls. We'll never know if Peter Curtin got his final wish. Texas, 1997. Stanley Ray Ferguson orders a modest final meal: half a chicken, French fries, onion rings, and 2 root beers. Nothing unusual there. But when the food arrives, something snaps. Ferguson begins laughing. Not a chuckle or nervous giggle, loud, hysterical, uncontrollable laughter. He laughs while eating. He laughs between bites. He laughs so hard guards exchange worried glances. The laughter continues until they lead him away to the execution chamber. Even then, witnesses report hearing distant echoes of it down the corridor. Was it madness? A psychological break? Or was Ferguson laughing at the absurdity of it all, that the state was giving him chicken and fries before pumping poison into his veins? We'll never know. The laughter died with him. 1995. Odell Barnes requests the simplest last meal in this list: a single apple. The guards bring it. Barnes picks it up, examines it, takes 1 small bite, then sets it down. "That's enough," he says. The apple sits there, barely touched, 1 bite missing. Barnes refuses to explain. He just stares ahead, waiting for the inevitable. There's something profoundly empty about this choice. No comfort, no excess. Just 1 bite of an apple and acceptance. It's minimalist in the most haunting way possible. What was he thinking in that moment? That nothing could satisfy him now? That food no longer mattered? Or was that single bite a quiet rebellion, taking only what he wanted and nothing more? The apple was thrown away. The question remains. Utah, 2010. Ronnie Lee Gardner faces execution by firing squad, one of the last in American history. His final meal request: steak, lobster tail, apple pie, vanilla ice cream, and 7-Up. But he adds one more thing. He wants to watch The Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King, during his meal. The prison agrees. Gardner eats his surf and turf while Frodo destroys the One Ring and Aragorn claims his throne. He watches heroes triumph while knowing his own story ends in minutes with bullets. There's something cinematic about this choice. Did Gardner see himself as a character in his own epic? Was he escaping into fantasy one last time? Or was he just a man who loved a good movie and wanted to go out watching one? The film ends. The meal is finished. Gardner is led to the execution chamber, strapped to a chair, and a hood is placed over his head. 5 riflemen aim at a target pinned to his chest. 4 bullets hit their mark. The fantasy is over. California, 1996. William Bonin, the freeway killer, convicted of murdering 21 young men and boys, makes his final request. 2 large pizzas, 3 servings of ice cream, and 14 cans of Coca-Cola. When the food arrives, Bonin doesn't eat, he devours. He shovels pizza into his mouth, chugs soda, barely pausing to breathe. Guards watch in disturbed fascination as he consumes everything with grotesque desperation. He eats until he's visibly sick, until his body can't take any more. It's not dining, it's self-destruction through consumption. One witness described it as watching someone try to eat himself to death before the state could do it. Hours later, California executed him by lethal injection. But in those final moments with food, Bonin had taken control the only way he could, by destroying himself on his own terms. These 10 meals reveal something we'd rather not acknowledge. Facing death doesn't necessarily bring clarity, peace, or redemption. Sometimes it brings strange poetry. Sometimes madness. Sometimes just one last act of control in a life that's lost all of it. The next time you sit down to eat, remember, for most of us there's always another meal coming. But for these 10 people, that tray was the last thing they'd ever taste. And somehow, that makes even an olive feel like the weight of the world.